Who else? Anyone else on the phone?
Len Sierra just joined.
Len Sierra just joined. Okay. How about on the telephone? I got one other person on the telephone. Who might that be? Okay. All right. So let me just make a note of everybody else.
That might be Dennis, Rick.
I know Dennis. Dennis and I were chatting for a while.
Yeah, but his name is grayed out, so I'm thinking he might have called back in, or he might be on a separate phone or something.
Oh, Dennis, are you on the phone and the
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the phone and on the web thing.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, you are really my secret weapon.
Am I messing you up?
No. Jake's on top of you. No, the 01 is Dennis, Jake.
Got it.
Okay.
But the secret's out, man. Now they know who your secret is.
All right. So let me just list everybody down here. Oh, and somebody's on top of it. And oh, Bill Franklin. It's Bill Franklin who gave me a nice video there.
Hi, Bill.
The top of your pate there. So.
Hey, guys.
Hi. All right, I'm coming in now. And Eric's coming in. Oh, I can say, oh, Eric's
Could you
back.
tell me how to get this back? I can't get this back.
Surroundings, I can see.
Hold on.
I'm still jealous of Eric's hair. I don't have any to brush back like that.
Okay. So let me just write that. Well, where's it gone? We're over here. I tell you guys, I've been arm wrestling with TurboTax for the last hour and a bit. That is not fun. Actually, I should say I've been arm wrestling with the TurboTax support people.
A little bit late, aren't you?
October 16.
Yeah, 2 whole weeks left.
That's exactly right. Plenty of time, right, Eric?
No problem.
That's right.
Since when has it been October? It's always been April, as far as I knew.
What did you say?
It's always been April, as far as I knew.
Well, it is, unless you file an extension.
Oh.
And if you file,
the only requirement is that you pay all the taxes due by April 15th. I don't care if you file.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So.
Above my pay grade.
Yeah. So. All right. So let me see if I've got everybody's name on my list before I start calling out. I think I've got everybody who's up to date. So let me do the old call out here, and so we've got Jake, we've got Dennis Correa, Jay Kruckman, John Appler, Jim Cameron, Jim Harrington, Len Sierra, Eric Bookbinder, Gary, and Bill Franklin. Did I miss anyone? Okay, I'm on top of it. I can fool you all. All right. So we don't have anybody new, at least not yet. Good. So I'm going to go down the list and see who would like some time today, and then we will go from there. We'll see who comes in a little bit later on down the road. Jake, anything for you? Well, yeah, you saw your doc. You got your results, so you got to tell us about that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. We all want to know, Jake. We all care. Dennis Correa, anything for you today?
Yeah, I'll give you the results of my PET CT scan.
Great. Jay Kruckman, any update for you today?
Nothing from me.
Okay. John Appler has an update because he started treatment, correct?
Yes, I'm all moved in, but nothing special today, Rick, just listening to learn.
Well, you can at least tell tell the guys how you did with your treatment and what your impressions were.
Oh, it doesn't start till October 5th. I just had the simulation. That's it so far.
Oh, okay. All right. And where are you going to go to? Mount Zion or Mission Bay?
Mount Zion.
Okay. Jim Cameron, a little update?
Yeah, and I have a couple questions. One of them specifically for you, Rick.
Okay. Jim Harrington, how about an update from you?
Well, there's not much update, Rick, because I don't know what's happening to my PSA and they haven't done any imaging. So I don't have much to say, but I can ask a question if there's time.
Okay, well, we'll have you ask a question, and you can also tell us what number treatment you're on. We don't know that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. It's lots of fun.
Len, anything for you, Len?
No, thank you, Rick.
Okay. Eric.
I can give a little update.
A little update, okay. Gary, anything for you?
Well, in my treatment, so I'm just dealing with incontinence a little bit and with impotence. So those are the two things I'm dealing with. But in a month, I'll have something. I'll finally get, go back to the PSA and find out what's going on. So.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to talk about specifically today?
No, I don't think so. I think that's just where I'm at.
Gary, I'm embarrassed to say we don't even know your last name. So if you want to just share it with me, send it to me on your.
Oh yeah, no, I'd share it with anybody. That's fine with me.
Okay. Well, what is it?
It's Gunville, Gunville.
Okay. Now we know. We don't have to.
Yeah.
We can call you Gary G in future instead of Spokane Gary.
That's right. But at least I'm from Spokane.
We do that.
That's it.
And Bill Franklin, what's on your agenda? Anything?
Personally, I'm doing fine. I'll give you an update on Rich if you like, but
Maybe I'm not sure that how many people on the call know who that is.
Yeah, I don't think you and Peter and me and maybe a couple other guys, but
Peter isn't here right now, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so this should be a relatively easy day today.
Bill Burhans has joined us too, Rick.
I just was looking to see who that was. Bill, how are you?
Good. I am here.
We hear you are here. I actually was trying to get some guy that who is being supported by Dave Hulbert in out of Minnesota, and his doctor is about to put him on olaparib, and he wanted all this information about olaparib. I said, well, but he's busy tonight. I said, well, I have a feeling that Professor Bill will be with us, so it depends how important it is for him. So I don't know. We may have this fella come in, or we may not. So.
Keepers, yeah, I hope so.
Okay. And someone else just joined us on the telephone.
It's Peter. For some reason I can't get on GoToMeeting. It won't open up.
Ooh.
For me. Yeah, I don't know why. I had to shut down my computer. I rebooted. I don't know. I have no idea what happened.
Well, the only thing is, Peter, we did switch to a different version over the past 2 weeks. So what I would recommend you do is call GoToMeeting after the session and talk to them.
Okay, yeah, because there's something wrong with it. Okay.
Right.
How many people are on?
How many people are on right now? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 right now.
So you're okay. So other people are getting on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a problem getting on tonight too. It asked me for my email, and it didn't log me on as an organizer, so I couldn't change names. I had to go back on and re-enter my email and my password again.
Yeah, I think the reason for this is that
Did you not pay your bill?
No, in fact, they owed us money because they pulled a fast one on us. They renewed us at a more expensive rate with a lesser product. And we found out about it last week. So they refunded us a bunch of money, about $60, and they moved us from a 25-person room to a 50-person room. And in doing that, I suspect that they said it shouldn't alter clocking into the room, but it seems to. So the only thing I recommend you do is afterwards call in. All of the login information is the same, and just ask them to help you set up. I don't know why it did this for you. It shouldn't have done it.
Okay.
Okay.
Beautiful cat there, Eric.
Yeah, thanks.
Going off his pussy.
It is a beautiful cat.
So, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, Bill, is there anything you'd like to discuss tonight?
I think I should probably provide an update based on.
Good. Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
I absolutely agree. And Peter, is there anything you'd like to discuss tonight?
No, nothing I have right now.
Okay. All right, so let's kick off with Jake. Jake, tell this merry group about your most recent results from your tests.
Okay. Well, actually, I got pretty good news when I went to my doctor about a week or so ago. My PSA has been holding steady for about 7 months now. It's 0.6, and which I'm thrilled to death with. It's never been below 0.5 for me. So, you know, I asked her to do lipids for my doctor, and they're all within the range too. A couple readings are high, a couple are low, but they bounce around from month to month. But the one I'm mainly concerned with is the PSA, and I'm really happy to stand the same on the enzalutamide. So far, it is working for me.
Okay.
It's great news, Jake. Congrats.
Thank you, Lane.
But Jake and I had a little discussion around metformin, correct, Jake?
Well, we've had discussions before. You were asking me about calcium.
Okay.
I was taking calcium and D3.
Well, that was what there were a couple of things. One was whether you couldn't upgrade the amount of metformin you're getting from 500 to 1,000, right?
Yes, we did talk about that. You're right. I forgot.
Because your sugar levels were still slightly high.
Yeah. I'll ask her, but I'm almost positive she'll say no, because it's as long as I'm not diabetic per se, you know, 120 or above, she won't. She's worried about side effects, even though, as far as I'm concerned, there are no side effects.
Well, there are none. Who on the call is on metformin right now?
I am. Jim Cameron.
Jim Cameron. And how much are you taking, Jim?
1,000.
And any side effects?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Anyone else?
I never had any side effects from the beginning.
Right. Anyone else?
I am also
Larry,
1,000.
Okay, Larry. Go ahead.
I am also 1,000 also.
Okay.
Maybe a little. If I don't eat, if I'm not taking it with food, it can get a little stomach upset. Right. But I take it with food. It's okay.
Right. Right. And anyone else taking metformin on the call? Well, there's a bunch of you that really should be talking to your docs about taking it. Jim Harrington, you're not taking metformin?
No, I did for quite a while. It didn't seem to do much, and then I entered the trial, and now the chemo, and I figured, the help with it. But I did. It didn't bother me a bit, but I did stop it.
Right.
But I could start it up easily. I'm on the fence.
You know, I go back to the discussion that we had, and I have to credit Jake for reminding me, what is it, S.A.M? Statin, aspirin, metformin. Is that right, Jake?
Yes, that's correct.
So it's the point that Moyad made on that Moyad call, and you can listen to the Moyad call, and it's sort of, I think, about 2/3 of the way through, but there's good reason to be on statins, aspirin, and metformin, and if we're not, then we should be talking to our doctors about them. Both they're all relatively benign. We keep seeing on a regular basis, probably 3 or 4 times a year, studies coming out saying there's no harm to doing it and it has certain positive benefits. And there's loads of evidential medicine right now, and any doctor that isn't willing to do that needs to look at the evidential medicine, and we can provide that evidence. So again, I especially people with advanced disease. I mean, you're not going to see the difference. You're not necessarily going to see your PSA fall just because you're taking metformin, but it's not going to go up as quickly, and that's the evidence. So, you know,
may I ask how the other guys got their talker doctors into giving them 1,000? What argument did they use?
Well, that's the standard dose.
No, the standard dose is 500.
No, the standard dose is 1,000, and a lot of docs will start you on 500 to see if you're okay, and then raise it to 1,000.
Oh. Okay.
That's why everybody's getting 1,000.
So, Rick, I was taking metformin.
Yeah.
This is Bill. And I ran into, there were side effects. I was quite nauseous. And so I stopped taking it for a while. And I think Eric suggested to me that I should be taking it with food, which I was not.
Okay.
So I plan to go back on it. It's just, you know, one of those things where there's so much going on that it hadn't been top on my list, but I am going to go back on it. But it's also the case that I did, you know, it was causing me problems.
So,
but
what were the side effects, Bill?
Just nausea.
Nausea. Okay.
Yeah, but as Eric pointed out, I, you know, should be taking it with food, and I wasn't.
Right.
Maybe I won't have the problem next time.
And the other thing, and how much were you taking, Bill?
1,000.
So
I had started at 500.
Okay.
And with no problems, and the problems became apparent when I went up to 1,000.
The other solution is to go back to 500. If 500 suits you, go back to 500, but 1,000's better.
Yeah. Yep. I'd like to go up to 1,000. I mean, you know, this is a drug that I've actually worked with, and I know that it works.
Right.
It's crazy. I haven't gone back to it.
Right. So, you know, for those who are not taking it, and I would only say I would put in that category just the people that have recurrent disease. I mean, John Appler, you know, I really don't know that there's a percentage for you. I don't take it because my disease is under control. I think if your disease is under control, there's no real reason. But if you have more advanced disease, if you're on intermediate, even if you're on a holiday, I mean, we have a discussion, and we have plenty of references we can provide you that you can show your doctor, and if you can't get it from your med-onc, then talk to your PCP. But it's a pretty benign, if you take it right, namely you titrate up and you take it with food, it's pretty benign.
Yeah, I should also say that my med-onc gave me a lot of grief about taking it. And so I went to my primary care physician, and she's the one that eventually prescribed it.
Well, I mean, my theory is, and this is a total theory, but my theory is that they don't like the drug because it's associated with the independent medoncs like Snuffy and Schultz and all those guys, and they don't want to associate themselves with that. But certainly over the past 5 or 6 years, we've seen more and more evidence, and it's not a harmful drug. And as Bill will tell you, controlling sugar is a huge element of fighting cancer. Is that a fair statement, Bill?
Yeah, that is. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy that I haven't been doing it. It's absolutely crazy. It's just one of those things where there's so much going on that it slipped my attention.
Right.
But in the case of my med-onc, the reason why he was against it was because he didn't know anything about it. You know, I told him that I wanted to start taking metformin, and he asked me what it was, and I had to explain to him. And he said, well, I'm not going to prescribe it. Go to your primary care physician. Maybe she will. So I think, you know, the lesson there is if your med-onc isn't willing, you know, don't drop it there. Go to your primary care physician.
Right. There may be guys on the call that we've given that advice to, and that's how they've gotten the drug. But
well, that's what I did, Rick. My med-onc, you know, based on our conversations here, I talked to her about it, and she kind of poo-pooed the idea like Bill's did. So I went to my primary care, and she said, well, you're pre-diabetic, you know, okay. She wasn't happy about it because she only wants to give it if you're diabetic. But, you know, and she probably is going to give me a hard time this time too, because my glucose is only 107 or 108, I believe, which is, you know, a little bit high, but not too awfully high.
Bill, do you have any good studies up your sleeve?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any good research studies on the use of metformin that you could provide?
Yes, I can dig them out.
Okay. So
I got to try to remember to. Yeah.
Okay. So we have, well, I mean, I know Dr. Steve did some research, and I've got a whole litany of studies, about 4 or 5 studies that were done in some sort of a meta study in a chart form, which I usually send out. If I can find them whilst I'm on the call, I'll put them in the chat box window. But if Bill has anything else, and you know this is Bill's area of study, then that's the sort of thing we have to be giving to these medical oncologists who are resistant to give it, because that's the only way that we'll convince them that it makes sense to prescribe this drug.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, one of those instances where you might have to be really proactive and push your doctors hard. And it's easier to do that if you have data to show that it works. So I will I'll find the study.
Okay.
Hey, Bill, my recollection is that the clinical studies with metformin were only done in diabetic populations, so we don't really have anything on non-diabetics. Do you know if that's true?
No, I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay.
My recollection, something, you know, I think that there are studies in non-diabetic populations as well, because otherwise, you know, I don't think we would be discussing it like this. But I'll track down these papers and put them out.
Hopefully I'll get a couple of minutes break sometime during this call where I can just look through and see if I can find that window.
So this is Gary. Can I, before we leave this discussion, this is really interesting to me, but can you also tell me why aspirin? I understand metformin reduces the sugar. What does aspirin do? And then what does a statin do?
So I know what the statin does for sure, and I think I know what the aspirin does, but I may defer that to somebody else and then chip in after. we know now that when the cancer gets aggressive and it cannot find testosterone, it can break down cholesterol and extract the testosterone out of the cholesterol, because cholesterol is actually a hormone with a testosterone base, and the cancer gets so clever that it starts extracting the testosterone out of the cholesterol. And whilst I cannot tell you in detail how abiraterone works, one of the things abiraterone does is it interferes with the process of the cancer extracting testosterone from the cholesterol. So anything that helps reduce the level of cholesterol in your body helps you manage your prostate cancer. That's the statin. Anybody want to take a shot at aspirin? Or, if not, I have a makeshift answer, but I don't know if it's the right one.
My understanding, Rick, is that it's, especially for those of us on Lupron, which almost all of us are because we're on the advanced call, there's a problem that usually arises called metabolic syndrome, and that includes high cholesterol, likelihood of diabetes. So the aspirin kind of is an adjunct to the statin. It just helps, thins your blood and reduces the risk of a heart attack. Because with a metabolic syndrome, you're more likely to have heart issues, and the statin and the aspirin kind of help with that. They kind of complement each other. That's my understanding. I don't think it has any specific effect on cancer itself. That make sense?
Anyone else want to chime in on that?
I'll just say that your explanation for statins is right on the mark, but I don't know enough about aspirin to be able to comment on it.
Anyone? Thanks. Anyone else want to talk about aspirin?
Anybody want to know what the dose is for the aspirin?
Yeah, I mean, they say that one baby aspirin a day is sufficient, which is about 80 whatever it is milligrams or whatever, 81 I think. I mean, my understanding of aspirin is that I agree 100% with what Jake said, that it thins the blood, it reduces the risk of metabolic syndrome, but also that it also addresses inflammation, and the less inflammation you have in your body, the better it is if you have cancer. I'm not exactly sure why it's better to have less inflammation, but I do know that inflammation can give rise to, can foster the cancer. Maybe it has something to do with the immune system. Professor Bill, can you?
Yeah, okay, you got it. That's I'm remembering. It does limit inflammation, and cancer is a disease of inflammation, and it is that it is the immune system that's involved in that. And so the less inflammatory responses you have, the better off you are. And aspirin does just that. It inhibits inflammatory responses. I blanked there.
Okay, great. Anyone else want to say? Len, you're usually good on this type of stuff.
Yeah, I had to unmute myself. My recollection is that the platelets supposedly shield cancer cells from the immune system. So I think that's supposed to be the link in aspirin's role in the immune system in cancer. And I think there was a WebMD article about this not too long ago, and they did they said it was an observational study where there was a lower risk of death due to prostate cancer for people who took aspirin.
Right. Right.
Unfortunately for me, I tried even the low dose, and I wind up with blood in my stools.
Oh, wow.
So I stopped. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I suppose my 86 gray of IMRT predisposes me to that condition.
Right.
But the aspirin was not good for me.
Right. Right. And I mean, some people do have side effects from aspirin, you know, excess bleeding and stomach upsets and what have you. And if you do, then you're not a good candidate. But if you can take it, there's loads and stuff. I mean, just Google aspirin and prostate cancer. Go to New Prostate Cancer International, Mike Scott's site that I often reference, and put in aspirin, and I bet you there'll be 5 or 6 studies that'll come up. So Gary G, just this is an easy one to research. Okay.
Thank you.
And I put in the chat box window one article that I have, which lists several metformin studies. Some of them are in vitro, but there are some studies, and there are a lot more. Again, go to New Prostate Cancer International. Is everybody on this call aware of that link, New Prostate Cancer International? Or is there anybody who doesn't know how to find New Prostate Cancer?
Info link, Rick, not international. It's info link, not international.
Sorry. Well, it's New Prostate Cancer International. I think International is the parent. New Prostate Cancer Info Link is the actual website. You're right. So there's a I just put the URL in the chat box window. For those of you who are on the phone, it's Prostate Cancer Info Link. ProstateCancerInfoLink.net. NET. So go to that. Go there, and you'll find any number of. I mean, I feel like a broken record here, but sign up, get the daily or the weekly or the monthly digests. There's so much good stuff there. I mean, I have trouble keeping up with everything. Let Mike Scott do the heavy lifting, and then you figure out what's going on in the prostate cancer world from there.
Yeah, I listened to your presentation, Rick, that you gave out at the PCRI, and as I recall, you said that you felt that was the best single resource for prostate cancer news, and I agree 100%.
Right.
I think if I didn't follow any other prostate cancer news and science, if all I did was go to the New Prostate Cancer Info Link, I'd be pretty good.
Right.
If your time is limited, just use that source.
Right. Now, the caveat is, and I said it publicly, and I'll say it again here, we don't always agree with what Mike Scott says. He's pretty opinionated. He knows he's pretty opinionated. If you try to argue with him on the blog below, you'll probably get rebuffed. But have courage, stick to your point, and he may come around, or he may not, or he may just agree to differ. He doesn't back down very often. But I don't always agree with his. I mean, for years and years, he and I have had differences about testing, and slowly but surely, he's coming closer to my view that there's no harm in testing. That the harm in testing is from the communication and not from the test. But people have their differences. Ruben Segev, God rest his soul. Some of you may remember Ruben on these calls long time ago on the Reluctant Brotherhood calls. It was well before Answer Cancer. He would argue with him all the time. He'd never get anywhere, but he loved to argue with him. And, it was sort of amusing after a while. But the information that's there, what he's directing you to, not so much his commentary, but what he's directing you to, is terrific. And the fact that he does all that heavy lifting by reading through these articles and then summarizing them is phenomenal. And, he's a fantastic resource, and I'm really grateful to him. And I've told him, and, you should feel free to tell him. So I really, I strongly recommend that site. And if you want to find evidence about statins and aspirin and metformin, that's a good starting place. Okay. Well, that was a pretty good opening session. So let's move on. Dennis Correa, tell us how your PET scan came out.
Yeah, this is my scan that I had done because of my progression as indicated by the PSA rising to 2.1. And this, as I understand this type of scan, it's a combination PET-CT using fluciclovine as the injection material. And it's designed to show the areas that have the most metabolic activity, indicating this is where the cancer has come back and is growing. And I'll just read for you my report. They identify the findings here as hypermetabolic findings at the following locations: right aspect of the prostate, suspicious for malignancy, and of course I've got all the images to go with this stuff. Then I've got the right femoral neck, the sacrum, and L2, and to a lesser extent the left femoral neck, and L3 with sclerosis suspicious or osseous metastasis. So the left femoral neck is a new one that was never indicated on my earlier scans. Then it says faint nodal uptake at right precarcinal region and right hilar, right parabronchial regions of non-specific origin. So I don't think those were necessarily related to the prostate cancer. I'm not sure what that actually means, and it says prominent focal uptake features at the right supraclavicular regions bilaterally of non-specific origin. So I guess that means that that's not necessarily related to the prostate cancer. Then I get some tiny non-tracer avid lung nodules. I guess these are not related to the cancer either. So that's basically the report, and I'm waiting. They were taking this report. They have at Mayo, they have a tumor board of different specialists and individuals, doctors there that review this situation, my background and so forth, and for the recommendation of my next line of treatment. I suspect Zytiga will be on there for sure. Continue with my existing Lupron. And Dr. Singh had mentioned earlier about possible radiation to the prostate. And that's where I'm at. I'm actually waiting for their recommendation. They're supposed to meet today, so I don't know when I'll actually get their recommendation. And the other development is Dr. Singh is at the Mayo up in Phoenix, and he would like to set me up with another local med-onc here that works for Arizona Oncology, Dr. Rafias.
What's his last name again?
RAFIY A-T-H.
R-A-F-A-Y.
I-Y.
I-Y.
A-T-H.
Rafiat. Okay.
Rafiat. Yeah.
Okay. I'll get the lowdown on him on Wednesday evening for you.
Yeah, he was recommended by Dr. Singh. He knows him. They did their medical training together, and I will probably see him here locally. So he's close by for my ongoing Lupron injections and my blood work and so on. So I'm waiting to hear back from them on my date for my first appointment with him.
Okay, well, I mean, the first thing I would say is it's really great that you can that Dr. Singh has got a local guy that he can work with. You know, that's a terrific system when it works, as Jim Cameron and others will attest. Especially since you have confidence in Singh, and Singh has confidence in the local guy. So, you know, we're not going to get into a similar situation like we had before, and it makes it far easier for you that you don't have to schlep up and down I-10 every time you need some treatment.
All right.
So that's really good. As far as the scan is concerned, you said that the only major difference is that the left femoral neck is now identified when it wasn't identified before. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, that's correct, but the major differences in the other L2, L3, sacrum and the right are all at this point hypermetabolic, so they are growing or whatever faster than what they had been, and those are the areas of progression, I guess.
But do we know? I mean, I know it's hard. I mean, this was, guys, for those of you wondering what type of scan this was, I'm pretty sure this was an Axumin scan. So this is the Axumin technology that that Dennis is doing. Was it referred as that to you at any time as Axumin, Dennis?
Yeah, I looked that up, and that's the brand name for it.
Right. So this is what we've been talking about in terms of as the Axumin scan. And those of you who are at PCRI, you know there was a big presentation on it, and a lunch presentation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is probably the best scan that's available, that's widely available. If you cannot do a PSMA scan or something more detailed, this is the best scan to be requesting. Now, the issue, of course, is how do you compare this to earlier scans, because this is more detailed. So have they, did Dr. Singh agree that these areas were worse than they were before, or is he just saying, well, no, this is just a better view of them, as it were, than what we got before?
No, I think my understanding is that they are worse than before, because these are the areas now that have come back and appear to be resistant to the Lupron, or found other ways to use the other androgens, and are growing as a result.
Okay. Okay, so like you say,
measure of progression. It's not. I don't think it's directly comparable to the other scans.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's the big problem. Now, as you rightly say, you're probably in line for a second-line anti-androgen, whether that's abiraterone or enzalutamide, Zytiga or Xtandi, is somewhat up to you. In discussion with your doc, there are pros and cons, and you know you can listen to Chuck Ryan discussing one versus the other. It's linked on our website. But both are good. I don't know that one's necessarily better than the other. There's probably a little more research on the abiraterone now than on the enzalutamide, but finally enzalutamide just about 2 weeks ago came out with their initial results from the, I'm trying to remember the name of the study. I want to say Prospect, but that might not be right. But they came out with their results. So, you know, we know that a second-line anti-androgen early in the disease makes a lot of sense. So that's right. The other interesting comment is whether it's worth radiating the prostate, and we see more and more of that right now. We see more and more genitourinary medical oncologists recommending that level of treatment. Ken Anderson is about to undergo something like that, although it's not exactly clear what type of radiation he's going to get. He's Paul Korn's patient who lives in Phoenix, and the local radiologist, I don't think is on top of what's going on. So I basically advised him that he and Lucas, that Korn and Lucas need to talk to each other. I don't think you're going to have that issue at all with Singh and Mayo. But the idea is that they radiate the prostate. They don't usually do wide angle radiation because the disease is already in the lymph nodes and the radiation isn't going to eliminate it. That's the issue that Ken Anderson is having. They want to do wide angle, and I've never heard wide angle as being advisable for a man with T4, but it might be. So, you know, if they start talking to you about wide angle radiation on top of just focused radiation on the prostate, then you should be having some discussions and we can get involved further. The focused radiation on the prostate can be done in 4 or 5 seconds with SBRT, stereotactic body radiation. So you don't have to be going back and forth so many times. And it seems to be effective. That's what Dr. Steve had. Is there anyone else on the call who's had debulking diagnosed with metastatic cancer and they've had their prostate radiated after they were diagnosed with metastatic cancer? Well, we do have guys that have done that, and it does seem to be more and more common that they want to do it. And I do remember Dr. Steve saying one time, why wouldn't they do it in prostate? That's what we do in the other diseases. In ovarian, we bomb the ovaries, even if you're metastatic, because there's reason to debulk the primary tumor.
Dr. Singh's earlier explanation to me about that was relatively new findings indicating that when you have a progression in your metastasis, that it starts with when you still have the prostate, it'll come from that tumor on the prostate.
Right.
So this could help with new sites of metastasis, I guess, prevent those.
Right. It has in some way, shape, or form, I'm not 100% clear on it. I don't know. Bill maybe. But it has something to do with the fact that those prostate cells are still stem cells or have an element of stem cells in them. And because of the stem cells, it makes it more likely that they're going to migrate and lodge somewhere. So it has something to do with stem cells, but I'm not exactly clear. Bill, do you know anything about this?
Oh, I'm not going to answer, Rick. I'm I'm falling asleep and I missed half of the conversation. I'm sorry.
All right, we'll get you another time. You're not free and clear. Okay, just warning you. Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. Well, look. The one thing I will say is, I'm really pleased that you have a doctor who's on top of what's going on with you. Really pleased.
Me too.
And you know, I think that it's probably time to initiate some new treatment. I don't exactly know what, but we'll keep talking and we'll stay on top of it, and go from there. Okay. Anybody else want to say anything to Dennis? Questions? Thoughts on Axumin? Questions about Axumin, maybe? No?
I guess, this is Peter, I guess as a branch of Mayo, do they feel that Axumin is I mean, they have their own cyclotron up in Rochester, Minnesota, and they have, you know, their own advanced imaging and so forth. Do they feel that Axumin is the next go-to product for them, rather than send someone up to Minnesota for that scan?
That wasn't specifically discussed, so I don't know what their internal thinking is on it, but this was what Dr. Singh explained to me as the best available technology for measuring the progression.
Peter, that's the same sentiment I've heard. A lot of radiologists and oncologists are beginning to get on board the Axumin train, and they believe it is probably the most sensitive technology at the moment.
Well, I would just put one caveat in there. I don't think any of them would say it's more sensitive than PSMA testing, but it's much more readily available than PSMA testing.
Right, that's true.
And I want to thank Larry Fish, who posted a reference to prostate cancer and aspirin in the chat window. Those of you who are online, you can click on that.
I took a look at that, Rick. It's extremely technical. I'm not sure the guys are going to be able to digest much from that.
Okay.
They talk a lot about cyclooxygenase 1 and 2, and you know, there's a lot of biochemical terminology in there.
Okay. What's the conclusion then?
Well, I didn't read the whole article thoroughly, but they seem to be saying that, as Bill mentioned earlier, at least part of aspirin's effectiveness or seeming effectiveness in prostate cancer is its anti-inflammatory properties.
Yeah,
and as Bill mentioned, you know, cancer is essentially an inflammatory process.
Yeah, I'm reading the abstract, and that's the message I'm getting from the paper too.
One thing I was not aware of before that I got from the paper was that they believe that, well, they mentioned that aspirin lowers PSA, and they're not sure if it is somehow masking PSA, artificially lowering it, or if it's a true lowering due to direct anti-cancer activity. But yeah, I'd never heard that before, that aspirin may artificially lower PSA.
Oh.
In the same way that something like Avodart or Proscar is reputed to do.
Wow, how did you find that out so quickly? Where is that in the abstract, or?
I don't remember where I read it, but somewhere in there. No, I don't think it was in the abstract. It was further down in the discussion, probably.
Okay.
Oh, yes. I see it. And it says that it mentions concerns about drugs that artificially lower PSA levels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
I'd like to ask Dennis.
Yeah.
What was your experience with the Axumin? Was it relatively convenient and no side effects, no pain, no issues?
Yeah, it was pretty easy. I had to fast for at least 4 hours before the scan. I also had to abstain for at least 24 hours from any vigorous exercise before the scan. And it took probably about 35, 40 minutes. The interesting thing was that the material, this fluciclovine, is manufactured in Tempe. So I'm sitting in the room after waiting, and the nurse calls me in and puts a port in my arm for the IV. And then she says, as soon as it gets here from the manufacturer, we'll bring you in. I said, oh, wait a minute. I said, as soon as it gets here, where's it coming from? So she says, Tempe. So I said, oh, okay. But I guess it decays so rapidly that each dose is made up specifically for the individual just prior to that individual scan, and then they deliver it to the hospital. And I mean, they had the timing down really good. They brought me in there, laid me on the table, got me comfortable, and then the stuff came in, and they hooked me up to the IV and pushed it in, and in the tube I went. So the time in the tube was, like I said, about 35 minutes, and that was starting to get a little uncomfortable. My arms had to be stretched out straight over the top of my head because this thing went all the way up through my skull. And about 20 minutes, I guess, into it, I'm starting to get in my left shoulder a little cramping going on. And I really wanted to pull my arm down, but I didn't want to have to do this thing all over again. So I just kind of did a little meditation and helped me get through it so I could just stay there and for the time it took to finish the job. But there was no after effects. I didn't feel anything at all. It's obviously, if you have claustrophobia with being in tight spaces, that would be the biggest issue, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so let's move along. Jim Cameron, tell us how you're feeling in 2 weeks after your first infusion, and you have some questions.
Yeah, hi, Rick. Oops, I just lost my notes. There they are. I was feeling bad all the way up to Friday because I had diarrhea issues all week long. But as of Friday night, that seemed to calm down. And of course, with that, I was kind of washed out the whole, the whole time. Today, I felt not bad, not good, but didn't feel horrible. I was able to do a few things.
Okay.
And so I think if the diarrhea stays away, which I hope it will. They gave me medication for it. We should do better. And they tell me next week I should do better than last week. So.
Right.
Hey, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Everybody, I have rheumatoid arthritis, and they took me off my rheumatoid arthritis medication, and the doctor there told me, he says, what we're giving you here, you won't have RA pain. Well, that wasn't the case. Every night around 7, 8 o'clock, I get tremendous, but annoying pains in my back. And I called to the center, and they called me back, and they told me, go out and get Clarityn. Take one Clarityn pill, and the pain will go away. Now, I've had rheumatoid arthritis for 40, 45 years. I never heard of that. Well, I've taken them now for the last 5 nights, and it does pretty much work. Anybody ever hear anything like that? And they don't know why it works.
Well, yes. What I have heard before is that Clarityn can alleviate all kinds of symptoms from chemotherapy. So I don't think I've heard about it in the context of rheumatoid arthritis. I'm trying to think think I've heard of it in the context, I want to say nausea. Can anybody help me here? What is it they say you should take Clarityn for when you get, what side effects? Can anybody remind me?
Rick, this is Jake. My understanding is it's not for the chemo itself, it's for the Neulasta that they give you after the chemo. That can cause pain, and that's where the antihistamine is recommended. Okay. It's for the pain that sometimes Neulasta or the other one can cause you.
And did you get Neulasta, Jim?
Yes, that's the one they put on your arm when you leave. Yes, I did.
Okay. So I think what
it doesn't help. Like Frank Kelly said, it didn't help him, but I've read otherwise that it does help some people.
Who said it didn't help him?
Frank Kelly.
Oh, Frank Kelly. Okay.
I mean, I could tell the difference because like I said, I've had rheumatoid arthritis for quite a while, and my rheumatoid arthritis with methotrexate is pretty much under control. But they want me off methotrexate because that's a chemo drug also.
Well,
and right away the pains came back that I remember from years ago, which didn't bring back pleasant memories.
Well, the only thing I'm wondering from what Jake is saying, and I definitely have heard about using Clarityn for side effects, is that maybe you feel that the pain is comparable to the rheumatoid arthritis, but maybe
yes, definitely.
But maybe the pain is from the Neulasta.
Yeah, it could be, but like I say, the pain just reminded me of when I used to have bad arthritis. It was
right. Well, if the Clarityn is working, then let's hope that it continues to work and keep taking the Clarityn.
Oh, I've taken it for 5 nights now. And the first night or two before I took it, I couldn't get comfortable in bed. I couldn't fall asleep, but at least I've been able to sleep at night, which is a big help.
Okay.
The second issue I'm having is extreme dry mouth, especially at night.
Right.
It's so bad, it wakes me up every hour. I got to get up and drink like a half a glass of water every hour. I do that. I feel good. I go back to bed. Almost an hour later, same thing.
Did that start when you began the Clarityn?
That's a good. No, I've had dry mouth quite a bit, Rick.
Because I think
it might have got more intense with the Clarityn. I really didn't take notice.
I got a feeling that might be a side effect of the Clarityn. You should ask your docs about that. Anybody else have any experience of dry mouth with chemotherapy? Eric, Larry Fish.
Yeah, I've had this. I've had problems with dry mouth, and but so I'm on carboplatin right now, and I started drinking coffee. But yeah, I have quite a problem with it. I was gonna. Well, I'll wait till my turn.
Okay.
I had some questions. So.
Okay. Jim Harrington, dry mouth.
Yeah, Rick, it's Jim here. A little bit, but you can go to the drugstore, maybe it's too simple-minded, and get over-the-counter things for dry mouth. If you've done that, I guess I tried it, but my dry mouth is really not very bad, and it hasn't increased with chemo, so I don't worry about it. I know what you're saying, though. It's an annoying, very much of a nuisance, Jim, and so, but I would, if you haven't gone, you can always talk to your doctor. That's very good advice, of course. But I know in drugstores like CVS, they carry stuff for dry mouth. And My wife bought a bunch of it, and I looked at it, and I said, I don't know. There's also mouthwashes and other things you can do. Whether it's going to help you, I don't know, but I know it's an annoying problem.
It's not as bad during the day because I'm up and about, and I always have a glass of water or Gatorade, at arm's rest. But when you're sleeping at night, when you get woken up from a sound sleep because your mouth is hurting from being so dry, it's annoying.
Yeah, that's not so good. Maybe that's something you should really talk to your physician about. Do you take any sleeping pills or anything like that, or you don't do that? No, okay. Because there are ways to get a little better night's sleep and to get a little more continuous night's sleep, but then you have to go on and take Zolpidem or Ambien or something like that. But no point in going down that path. I wish you well. I don't know. But I know, have you checked the drugstore or just some over-the-counter stuff,
No, I really haven't. I was going to
I would go do that first.
Was to check with the doctor with the center over there and see what they had to say.
I think
this is
helpful so far.
I know in hospitals they used to use glycerin swabs for patients with very dry mouth. You might want to give that a try or talk to your doctor about it.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is give them a call over to center tomorrow morning and talk to one of the nurses over there. And if not, I have an appointment Friday with my doctor.
Yeah, let me just say, my starting point would be with the chemo nurses. Just the same way as they had a solution for you with the back pain and the Clarityn, they may have a good idea. You can ask them, what about some of these over-the-counter? Would you recommend? Wouldn't you recommend? But for issues like this, I do think that the chemo nurses are really on top of it because they hear it from so many people, from different people with different cancers getting chemo. So I would encourage you to start with the chemo nurse and then, come back, tell us what they suggest. And with a bit of luck this time, see, you'll have as good a solution as you have with the pain and the Clarityn.
That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Now,
and I got one other issue, Rick. This is
hold
probably
on,
right.
Hold on, Larry.
Hi, it's Larry Fish. I used this over-the-counter product, Biotene oral rinse. They have a few kinds of Biotene, but there's one product called Biotene Dry Mouth Oral Rinse. When I'd wake up during the night, just walk into the bathroom and swing it around my mouth for like 10 seconds and go back to bed. I really found that's helpful for me.
Yeah, Biotene was what I was.
How long did it last? How long was it effective for?
Well, I'll go back to sleep,
Was it good for 2 or 3 hours, or?
Yeah, and I do have a sleep problem, so I actually use it often as a regular product. It can be a little expensive if you buy small. I order it from Amazon. They have a few. Biotene has a few different kinds of mouthwashes, but there's one specifically for dry mouth. There are other brands. I tried a couple of other, but I just sort of, maybe that's a few dollars more than another, but I sort of found that worked for me anyway.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay. And so, how do you spell that? B-I-O?
I guess Biotene.
Okay.
Dry mouth oral rinse.
And Jim Harrington, you were going to say that's the product you had in mind?
Yes, that's right. I've got a lot of Biotene products, and that they do. They also have alcohol-free products, so that that when you not regular mouthwash, but this is. But yeah, that's what I was thinking of, Biotene.
Okay.
All right.
Good luck.
But first of all, run anything you're taking past the chemo nurses first, please.
That's what I'm going to do. This may be a very common issue for them in the big scheme of things.
Right. And your last one, Jim?
My last one, Rick, is. Hold on 1 second. Let me get my glasses on so I can read it. I got to write notes. I forget things left and right these days. Okay. How do we find out where my test with with Foundation One are? Or
Well,
when might we expect to get some results?
usually between 2 and 3 weeks from when they sent them.
All right, so we're about 10 days into it now.
When were they actually? I know that they were that they put the paperwork through on Friday, whatever
Friday,
that.
a week ago, Friday afternoon.
Right. So figure at least 2 weeks from the Monday. Don't count the weekend.
All right. So maybe the end of next week we might see something.
So the Monday, what was the date on that Monday, Jim?
Oh God. 29th, 30th. Let me see. The 29th was the day I was at the doctor's.
Okay. So figure
Wasn't it?
that the 29th was last Friday.
Or was it the 20? It was the 22nd I was at the doctor's. It was the 22nd I was at the doctor's. So Monday would have been the 25th of August of October of September. 25th of September.
So I would figure the earliest probably would be the week of the 9th. And what I would say is if we haven't heard anything from the 6th by the 16th, I will call David Marshak.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So we'll give them that 2 to 3 weeks, which is what they normally say, and then we'll chase them up if we haven't heard anything. But it is, I know that your paperwork's in their system because David told us that.
Yeah. I just want to make sure it's moving along and then bogged down someplace, you know?
I gotcha. Okay. So moving along, Eric. It is now. Oh no, I'm sorry, Jim Harrington. I beg your pardon, Jim Harrington. Just tell us quickly, where are you with your dose attack?
Well, it's going okay, Rick. I've had 5. I'm on a 2-week cycle.
Right.
Don't know why. I mean, mostly with 3 weeks, but doesn't seem to matter much. I go through the nadir. I get the dose attacks on a Monday, and I can count that Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday, I kind of hit the nadir a little bit and just get a little bit more tired. But I'm actually tolerating it quite well. I keep going to work and I keep on going. But I haven't had a PSA measurement real recently. They measure the PSA every month, but it went down from 5.1 to 3.9 or something. So it's going the right direction. No imaging, nothing yet. I just having the docetaxel. I get the Neulasta, the little, what's it called, on Pro or something, the little thing they stick on your stomach. Which somebody said that's a $5,000 shot or something like that. Actually, I don't think insurance pays $5,000, but this little device, got to give them credit, is pretty clever because 27 hours later, it puts the medicine in you. But other than that, I really have had no problems with it. We'll see what happens. I don't know how many my Dr. Stein at Cancer Institute here in New Jersey is going to give me. He initially talked about 10. But hopefully it'll keep working. I think that all those of us who I get a lot from the call from those who go through chemo. But I know there's some, I know Eric, you and I have spoken, may have had a little bit worse. I haven't lost any weight. I don't gain any weight. Food tastes crappy. And I had a piece of pizza the other day and I looked at it and it looked like a piece of pizza. It's with students. And of course always give students pizza. And because you never have any left over. And I looked at the pizza, it smelled like pizza, it looked like pizza, but it didn't. So those on the call say eat with a plastic spoon. And I can eat with a metal spoon, but your sense of taste stinks. And I haven't lost any weight, but I'm not putting on much weight. Since the first year I've lost 55 pounds. Well, you saw me, Rick, but I mean, I feel okay. My wife says I look like I just came from some kind of a concentration camp or something, but I don't feel badly at all, and I think I'm tolerating the docetaxel, and I'm looking forward to coming out the other end with a positive result. If this this doesn't work, I will be on carboplatin and maybe Jetvana, as our wonderful oncologist from Nebraska, right, Rick Nordquist, is talking about carboplatin and Jetvana. Anyway, I'd rather not think about that because I don't want to think about what that may mean. But at the moment, everything's okay, and I just keep on keeping on and go to work and not let this. And by the way, exercise. You know, and it's not so easy being on chemo. We often talk about exercise, Rick, but you just got to get yourself up. And I have my own weights and my own dumbbells and barbells and so forth, and I've been doing it for years, and it really makes a difference, especially on chemo. I know you feel better, anything to feel better. So keep exercising. So that's the story, Rick. I can't tell you PSA. I don't know.
Okay, so a couple of things.
Good for you. That's great to hear.
Yeah, I think so. And by the way, I've gotten a lot of help, not only from going out to Los Angeles to the prostate meeting and having dinner with all the guys who went out there, but it's been really very helpful. And everybody who goes through chemo has sometimes a good story, sometimes not so good. But yeah, I just hope it keeps working, and I hope I don't have to go on another chemo or add carboplatin necessarily to it. But we'll see.
So a couple of things I just wanted to mention to you.
Yeah, sure, Rick. Go ahead.
First of all, I'm really pleased that you're tolerating it as well as you are. And yes, there are.
Yeah, I think so.
And there are these side effects that are pretty normal. I mean, this cardboard mouth.
That's right. Yeah, I get fatigue and my stomach gets a little sore, but no vomiting. Yeah, sometimes a little loose stools, but you know, I'm doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, the cardboard mouth is a bit of a problem. I think that Biotene makes a product for that cardboard mouth. I just don't know which one it is. And just like we recommended Jim to speak to the chemo nurse, I would recommend you speak to the chemo nurse where you're getting the infusions and ask them which of the Biotene products they like to help you with the cardboard mouth. Because there are some products that may at least give you some slightly better sense of taste. So, you know, you don't have to just tolerate it. There may be some things you can do for it. Secondly, I just want to mention to you that if you're tolerating the docetaxel as well, I don't think you need to be too concerned about the additional chemotherapies. Certainly not afraid of them because the Jeftana cabazitaxel has a lesser side effect profile than the docetaxel.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, that's a very good point, Rick. Yeah, don't fear these things. You know, I mean,
right.
Yeah.
And Eric,
I agree with it. It's a good advice.
And Eric seems to be doing relatively well on the carboplatin alone. So, you know, some people can tolerate, and Richard Jensen, who isn't on the call tonight, but is often on the call, has done, how many did he say, 10 or 15 docetaxel and carboplatin? And
yeah, I think that's right. I think I remember because he's in New York and he's at Sloan, right? And
correct.
I think he was up to about a dozen or so. I think that's right. A combination, yeah.
You know, but what I do think is really important with you, and if it were me, I would be wanting to be right on top of the progression, because if you're not getting what you think you're getting out of the docetaxel, then you need to make that switch sooner rather than later. So, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Yes, I don't want to sit here on docetaxel if it really isn't as effective as another chemo. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Jim Cameron is getting tested, getting his blood work done weekly down there in Venice, Florida. And and I know a lot of guys that get their blood work done every couple of weeks when they're on chemo. So
yeah, mine is every 2 weeks. But not always. The CBC to give them. They're always measuring my blood counts, which are always crappy. So, and every 4 weeks they measure the PSA and do a full blood panel.
Well, you know, maybe you could ask them to have the PSA every 2 weeks, because.
Well, you know, that's a good point. I'd like to know myself. I'm really curious what's happening here. Good point.
Well, you are your best advocate, and if you would like to know, you have a right to ask them. I'd like to know, because if there's any upturn in that PSA, then the discussion immediately is, hey doc, you know, what about the carboplatin?
Yeah, that I completely agree.
So I do recommend that you talk to your doc about maybe getting your PSA every couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, I could do. That's right. Instead of just the CBC. Yeah, and they're going to measure it on Monday, so I'll have more next week.
Yeah, ask them.
But I don't disagree with them.
Okay, ask them for it, and they're sticking that needle in your arm. They take a little bit more blood for the PSA. You're not going to notice the difference.
Yeah, they got that right. Yeah, they're always taking blood. Okay.
Okay. All right. So, Eric, now we're ready for you, Mr. Bookbinder. Did you get back safely and without too much incident from Puerto Vallarta?
Yes, that was very uneventful.
Good. And
the,
and before you start, how were the other two restaurants that you hadn't tried when you spoke to us last Tuesday?
My wife decided she didn't want to go to them, so we didn't even go.
Okay.
So we just continued going to the buffet. She had some stomach problems, and that's why she wanted to go to the buffet, because she could pick and choose there a lot easier than at the restaurant.
Okay.
So, but we'd been to them before, and one was Mexican, one was Asian fusion.
Asian.
And the it's exactly what you'd expect. The Mexican restaurant at the Mexican resort was the worst restaurant. But I guess they figured, they didn't have to put anything into it because it was part of their culture, so therefore it had to be good. But at any rate,
I'll just tell you one thing very quickly. I noticed yesterday, I actually had a favorite restaurant in Tucson that was Mexican, but it's a very specific type of Mexican cuisine, I think from Mexico City. And I used to love going to this restaurant, but I left here in 88, 30 years ago. I just picked up a newspaper and saw an ad for that restaurant. So I'm going to be going back there and seeing if the food's still as good as I remember 30 years ago. Hopefully they got fresh supplies in since then.
I hope the waiters aren't the same.
Yeah.
The waiters are all cute around here because they're all they're all the co-eds from University of Arizona.
Okay.
Okay, go.
So let's see, back to the treatments. Again, the only problem I have with the carboplatin, and I finally decided that must be what's doing it, is I tend to have diarrhea, and I have a huge amount of gas. I just have gas all the time. So I don't know if that's coming from the carboplatin or not, but it's the only thing that's different, so I presume it is. I managed to sleep through my radiation appointment today. That was real smart. I had an appointment this morning. I got back to the house around 10, and appointment's at 2. I said, I can take a quick nap. My wife woke me up at 2:30. That didn't work. But anyway, they were very nice about it, and just rescheduled for tomorrow.
Okay. Is that the first?
So,
is that going to be?
Yeah, that'll be the first of this session. Yeah.
Okay.
Which was not a good one to miss. So other than that, everything seems to be going okay. I was curious about that comments about PSA testing. I haven't had any PSA testing in probably 2.5 months now. Like, they used to just, rattle them all off, and PSA was one of them. And they do a CBC and a couple others, and so I'm going to ask them to do the prostate the PSA when I go in. The last, I went all the way up to 30 and then went back down to 26 or something, but that's irrelevant at that point. So I have a feeling I may end up with one of those 300 or 400 counts if I go again.
Well, I'd say a couple of things about that. I mean, we do know that the PSA is less and less important as you advance into this disease, and what is better are the comparison of scans. At the same time, with someone like Jim Harrington, where his disease is right now, and maybe your situation maybe 2 years ago when your PSA, or a year ago when your PSA was still very low, there is some significance. I mean, and I would say to Jim, probably a good idea to get a scan. You've had 5 treatments. Might not be a bad idea to get another scan. I mean, I know.
Oh, they're gonna schedule a scan, Rick. It'll be upcoming. Oh yes, you're right.
Every 3 months. I mean, the guys who were getting chemo at UCSF that I knew were getting scans every 3 months or so, because that was the best way to see the effectiveness. When was the last time you got scanned, Eric?
Oh, when I went to the emergency room.
Oh,
they did. They did 2 CTs, 3 CTs, 2 X-rays, and 3 MRIs.
Right, and that was about a month ago now, right?
Yes.
So probably once you've gotten 3 or 4 more carboplatin infusions, how often are you getting the carboplatin? Every 3 weeks?
No, once. 3 weeks on, 1 week off. So once a week for 3 weeks, and then off for a week.
Okay, once a week for 3 weeks, then off for a week. So maybe you've got after 6 or 9 infusions to check and see.
Oh no, absolutely. They have it scheduled already.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean they're pretty good. If they're working with UCSF, which they are, right? That
That
Agarwal will be right on them to so that he can see.
I hope so.
The
the radiation's at UCSF.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to say to you is, and I again sound like a broken record on this call, have you talked to the chemo nurses about the gas and the diarrhea?
No. It just happened. It happened actually while I was in Mexico.
Okay.
And so I attributed it first to the Mexican food, but it didn't stop when I left Mexico. So that's the next plan. Yep, absolutely, you're right.
So please talk to them. And if need be, even though you're not getting your chemo there, you can talk to them when you're over at Mission Bay tomorrow. Run upstairs and see if you can just talk to a chemo nurse, because you're under Agarwal, and they'll give you some ideas as to what you might be able to get.
Eric, this is Jim Harrington, Rick. I have a little problem with diarrhea too, sometimes after the infusion or maybe a few days thereafter. And my chemo nurse gave me some sheets on foods to eat and not to eat. So, I mean, dairy you should stay away from, of course, roughage and so forth. But nobody wants to take Imodium, but now and then you have to. But I would see you should look, and I don't know if Rick, if you want to give him my email address, I can forward these sheets that my chemo nurse gave me on diarrhea. It's just 2 pages, and it's got pictures and everything, so doggone easy to look at. But there's certain foods you should stay away from, thinking about just foods for the moment, if you have soft stools or diarrhea. It's a pain in the ass, diarrhea. No, and I've had to take Imodium and so forth. But watch the foods you eat. And anyway, but I don't know what else you can do about it. It's just a nuisance.
Yeah, the old brat diet.
The old what diet?
Brat.
Yeah, brat. That's bananas,
rice, applesauce,
and tea,
toast.
and tea. Yeah, that's right. And crackers. Yeah, that's right. The brat diet. Yeah, that's that's true. But I'd stay on that for a while, and you're definitely gonna lose weight.
Yeah,
but that's right. I mean, also stay off dairy. I mean, I like yogurt. I'm just a dairy nut. I drink milk. I still do, even though I'm 75. But that's not the best thing if you have diarrhea. And don't eat roughage foods. Like whole grains and things like that.
It's also not the best thing for prostate cancer. We pretty much know that. Avoid your milk. Go to rice milk, soy milk, anything you like.
That's right. Yeah, if you can tolerate it. Yeah.
Yeah, I use cashew milk.
There you go.
Yeah, I can't stand it. I'd start drinking it.
Well, these are the sacrifices you have to make. I mean, it's really important to stay away from to stay away from some of these food products. And I know, Jim, you've heard it from so many people over the years on this.
Yeah.
But it's your choice. But just
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. It's
I
one of the
love
things
yogurt
that
too. Just talking about it makes me crave a big bowl of yogurt.
yeah. Well, you know, I've been losing so much weight. I have 3 dietitians. You know, I got more nurses and doctors and PAs and so forth. But she said to me, Jim, I give you permission to eat anything.
Well, that's also
anything that works for you.
Yeah.
To stop losing weight. And my wife buys ice cream. You know, now you met her, Rick, when we were there, and I can't eat ice cream all the time. Come on, it's ridiculous, you know. And
so we got to move on a little bit because I still got 3 guys to get through. So just Eric, talk to the bottom line is talk to the doc. I sent you Jim's email address so you can send him and exchange these documents and just keep us posted. You know, keep us posted. Gary, was there anything you wanted to raise? I have you ticked. Gary? Let's see if Gary's still with us. What's going on here? I have lost my attendees. Oh, there they are. Is Gary still with us?
He shows online, but he's got both of his icons are muted.
Okay, well, we'll come back to him. And we have...
Okay. I'm sorry, I had to go get supper. So what are we talking about?
We're asking you if there's anything you wanted to raise.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm out now.
Okay. Okay. And we have another, somebody joined us on the telephone in the last half hour. Who might that be?
This is Sylvester. It was me. I got home late.
Okay, Sylvester. Anything you want to talk about tonight?
Not this evening, but hello to everybody.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Sylvester.
Okay. So, moving down the list, Bill, give these guys an update on what you have been through the last couple of weeks.
Okay, so I guess there are 2 different issues. The first is I developed really severe bladder spasms a little bit more than a week ago, and which I have periodically, but when they usually go away after a couple of hours. And these are they're unbelievably painful. It's like one of my women friends who's had them too described them as similar to going through childbirth. But this time they didn't go away. So I went into the aftercare facility at Roswell, and they put me right into the hospital as an inpatient. And it turned out I had a raging UTI. And they put me on potent antibiotics, and the UTI is gone, and I feel a lot better. I haven't had a bladder spasm since. A complication for me is that because I have this intrathecal pain pump, you know, providing narcotics to my spinal cord, I can't feel as well anything in the pelvic region on down. And so the cues that I normally feel that tell me that a UTI is coming on, and I get them not very often, but UTIs, that is. But you know, probably more frequently than most people because I have to self-catheterize a lot of the time. And anytime you have to introduce anything into something into the bladder, you increase the risk. So I don't have those normal cues until the infection is, you know, gone absolutely crazy. But I'm done with it, and I was discharged 3 days later, and I'm feeling fine. So the other issue is it looks like my run with olaparib is coming to a close, and that's the more disturbing development. My PSA has been climbing the last 3 readings at about 6-week intervals, has gone up. And the first 2 were very slight increases from about, I don't remember, 0.8 to 0.18. I can't remember, to tell you the truth, and I'm really sleepy.
I've got 1.06 to 1.08 here.
Yeah, that sounds like the second reading, and there was one before that.
Okay.
And then it went up again from 1.08 to 1.36, 6 weeks later. So, my PSA is still pretty low, and that's not a huge increase, but it's enough to tell us, 3 times in a row that the olaparib is probably losing its effectiveness. So I'm beginning to do what I need to do to find something to replace it. And the first thing is, tomorrow I'm going to have another PET CT scan. So the PET CT scans that I have are sodium fluoride 18 scans, which are bone specific. And the CT portion is just to provide an overlay of the skeletal system, so that it's easier to identify the metastatic lesions.
Yeah, they run. Anyway.
I'm sorry? Okay.
Somebody, I think it was Jim Harrington, but if somebody can mute whoever's talking in the background, we'd appreciate it. Go ahead.
So, and the CT portion, the CT scans are to look for visceral mets. And once we have that data, then there's going to be there's an upcoming tumor board meeting, which will discuss my case. And as in the past, I will attend it. I'm one of the few patients that gets to attend their own the tumor board meetings that discuss their cases. But it's been really helpful for me in the past, and I think for the clinicians, because as a BRCA2 positive patient, I know some things that these guys don't know. And so I'll get ideas from them about what to do. And I've also contacted Johan de Bono, who's the developer of olaparib in England, and asked him for advice. And interestingly, he suggested that I might try some of the 2nd and 3rd generation PARP inhibitors. So olaparib inhibits this enzyme called PARP, which I worked on for many years. And these newer versions are, the orders of magnitude, 2 or 3 logs more cytotoxic in cell cultures of tumor cells compared to normal cells, where olaparib shows about a 10-fold increase in cytotoxicity. So, theoretically they should be much better. The problem is that my reduced sensitivity to olaparib might be due to a reversion of the mutation in BRCA2. And Johan recently published a paper about how this frequently occurs in prostate cancer patients, more so than in other types of cancer. And it occurs mostly with patients that have specific types of mutations, and I fall into that category. And so if that mutation has reverted, then I'm now back to wild type, at least in the tumor, not in the rest of my, the rest of my body is still, has all the rest of the cells in my body are still mutant. But what that means is that my tumor cells would be no longer sensitive to any PARP inhibitor. And so my plan is to get my tumor DNA sequenced. There is a company associated with Roswell Park, a recent startup company that sequences, but I probably will not use them because I have doubts about how good they are, since I know all the characters involved, and I'll probably go to Foundation One and have to get my tumor DNA sequence. I'm not sure what I'm going to use as a source for the sequencing because I don't, just to remind you that olaparib did a great job of knocking down my disease from a point where I had many metastases. And the last time that we looked at a scan by scanning about 3 months ago, I was down to just 2 metastatic lesions, one which was stable and the other which was growing, but growing very slowly. So there's not a lot of material to, there's not a lot of tumor cells to obtain that could be used for sequencing.
Where were those lesions, Bill?
What were the lesions?
Where were the lesions?
There was one was on my spine, and I don't remember exactly where, and the other was on a rib. So
both of those are hard spots to biopsy. Very difficult spots to biopsy.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had a rib taken out to biopsy one on a rib a couple of years ago, and that wasn't any fun. And I'm not willing to go through that again.
No.
I did have a spinal lesion biopsied at Sloan Kettering back a couple of years too, and that worked. I think it depends on where it is.
Right.
It the outer surface of the spine, facing outward toward the skin. Right. If it's in facing your guts, then it makes it a lot harder. But I'm hoping that I'll be able to do this with a liquid biopsy.
Right.
By capturing
a couple of things,
cells.
Bill. The first is that I know that Foundation Medicine now has a specific BRCA test that will identify BRCA, whether it's germline or whether it's somatic. It doesn't tell you whether you have germline or somatic, and I don't even know if it's appropriate in your case, but it finds BRCA mutations in your body. And I don't know much more about it, but I do know that it's been around now for about 6 months.
Yeah, we've had this discussion before, and there's been some confusion on the part of some of you. Foundation One only looks at somatic cell mutations and not at germline, at least unless they've changed things. But as of a couple months ago, they don't look at germline mutations.
Right.
But in any case, I already know that I have a germline mutation.
No. But for this test, they do. They don't really do germline testing, but for this test, it will identify whether you have a BRCA mutation arising from any source.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. I mean, I assume that BRCA2 would be in their panel, no matter what. The larger question is whether or not we can get enough DNA to actually sequence.
Well, and the reason I raise it, and we can connect you to the right people so you can talk to them if you want, is I don't know how they run this BRCA2 test. I don't know whether it's it must be a blood test. Otherwise, how could they be looking at germline? So this new BRCA2 test, I forget what it's called, but if you go to their site, it is on there. I think I've got it bookmarked. I'll have to look for you afterwards. But this new BRCA2 test that they're doing picks up either somatic or germline. But that's not true in general with Foundation medicine.
Right. But I'm not sure how that's going to help me. I mean, I need, their tests in the past have picked up somatic mutations in tumor cells. And that's what I need to know. I mean, there's no possibility of the mutation reverting in my germline. I mean, that's set in stone. And the question is whether or not the tumor cells have reverted. And so, it's a question of math. It actually, to do these tests, to the sequencing, generally the tests involve just sequencing the gene and seeing whether, where the mutations are. But that requires, a certain amount of DNA, very, very small amount because they amplify it. But it does require, a finite amount. And because, I don't have, at this point, I don't have a lot of a very high tumor burden.
Let me just move on to the other issue, because I just want to check. Let me just find out, because we may have 10 minutes, we may not have 10 minutes.
Okay.
Peter and Larry Fish, did either of you want to raise anything? I'm sorry, you did tell me, but I didn't make a proper note.
It's Larry. No, I didn't have anything I had to say. Oh, sorry. I'm okay. I had nothing to say this week.
Thanks. And Peter, did you need any time? Peter?
No, I'm okay. I had some questions for some other guys, some other issues that came up this week, but it's nothing important.
Okay, well,
nothing I need to deal with.
Okay, well, maybe we'll have like 5 minutes left. We'll spend another 5 minutes, 7 minutes with Bill, and then we'll come to you for the last.
Or I'll just email you or something like that.
Okay.
Just some.
So, Bill, the other area that I wanted to get into with you is I was waiting to hear back from De Bono, for you to hear back from De Bono, and you're saying that De Bono does think that there is a percentage in possibly trying these stronger PARP inhibitors?
Yes. Yeah, I think I forwarded the email to you that you sent to me.
I didn't.
I might be misremembering, but.
No, I didn't see it, but no worries, no worries. Well, the big question is, have you reached out to speak to, is it Fong Wang or Wang Fong? I forget which way round it goes. I think it's Fong Wang.
It's Fong Wang. Yeah. No, I haven't, not yet. But I will. I mean, the first step is to get through these scans tomorrow and see what exactly the rise in PSA might correspond to. And then, I'll get input from the tumor board. And, I will contact him very soon. It's just been
Okay. No, I mean, that's fine.
Yep.
I mean, because that's the talazoparib, which is the most powerful. And then if you need the connection to rucaparib, just tell me and I'll do it in a heartbeat. All I got to do is send a note or pick up the phone and talk to Tom Harding at Clovis, and I'm sure they would be very receptive to you too. And it isn't an or, it's an and. If you'd like me to make the connection for Rubraca and Clovis, please tell me.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Rick, I want you to do that, and you could go ahead and do it. Just say, that this is that a patient that is failing olaparib, and what are the possibilities?
Yeah, I will do that, and I think you've talked to Tom Harding before, and maybe even to the scientists. But I'll definitely take care of that. I'll do that in the next, maybe even tonight if I can get to it.
Okay, there really isn't a rush. I mean, it's gonna, there's a lot of other things that have to happen first before we make the switch. But yeah, I would greatly appreciate that if you could do that when you have time. And I am going to contact Fong Wang as soon as I can find some breather room here.
Okay.
I mean, the stay in the hospital really set me back last week.
But I mean, those are the, I think they say that Rubraca is 7 times more powerful than olaparib, and talazoparib is supposed to be 100 times more powerful. So
yeah, right. Yeah, so a couple orders of magnitude. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know what I'm going to do if that doesn't, if it looks like I'm not going to be able to take the more potent forms of PARP inhibitors, then I'm going to be coming back to you guys and looking for suggestions, I think.
Right. Let me throw it open for people to talk to you.
Yeah, this is Len. I wanted to ask Bill, you mentioned that De Bono said in some cases the BRCA2 reverts to wild type.
Right.
I'm thinking that might be a good thing, no? Because its normal function is a tumor suppressor, wild type.
Yes, you're right, but it's too late. I've got to do it. At this point, I have the tumor, and I've had a drug that works because I have the mutation.
Yeah.
And it just makes the drug no longer effective. And I'd rather, at this point, I'm not going to get rid of the tumor. And I'd rather that the, so as you know, Len, tumors, yes, it's a tumor suppressor, but tumors require multiple genetic hits.
Yeah.
And this is only one. And all the other ones are in place.
Right. Yeah. The other thing is, so you're talking about other options if you can't use another PARP inhibitor. I had mentioned to Rick, and I intended to tell you, somewhere on one of the boards, I had seen a guy who said he had failed olaparib, and then he went on to BAT therapy, and that brought his PSA down to less than 0.1 or something like that. So, everybody's different, of course, but something to consider.
Okay. Remind me what BAT therapy is?
Oh, bipolar androgen therapy.
Oh, yeah, right. That's
that
something.
Could be fun too, right?
Yeah. When we talked about this in the past on these calls, I decided that was something that would be well worth pursuing. I'm thinking about, finding a trial for immunotherapy, various forms of immunotherapy. But, I understand that so far there's not much that seems to work very well for prostate cancer, even if it works well for other types of.
Right.
So,
yeah. That's what I'm reading too.
But yeah, that's the bipolar androgen therapy.
Testosterone boost.
Right. And go ahead.
Is the general thinking that once you've failed something, that's it? Or have they done experiments with taking a break and going back and seeing if somehow the resistance can be overcome?
I'm not sure. I don't know, and I'm not sure anybody knows. It certainly is the case that, some oncologists are advocating, even for patients on PARP inhibitors, that they take a break. So that, what happens is, tumor cells are really plastic genetically, meaning that they mutate constantly. They have tens of thousands of mutations. And so, when you become resistant, it's because resistant cells that have mutated outgrow the population that doesn't have those mutations. And if you eliminate the selective pressure provided by the drug, then you can let the population of tumor cells that is not resistant once again outgrow the other cells. But once you've begun to show resistance, I don't know whether or not, my thinking is, without a lot of data, that it might be too late. But it's a good question, and I'm going to put that to Johan de Bono too.
Good.
So the other thing that is interesting for anybody taking olaparib or but for anyone that has a BRCA2 mutation, I don't know if there's anyone else on this call, but Johan also reinforced the fact that any of us that have these mutations really need to be scanned frequently, and like once a month. And that's something that I've had to fight with my oncologist about, who he hasn't, he wants to scan me every 6 months. And we've compromised by having scans every 3 months. And that's not, now that I'm going to, next time I go into the exam room, I'm going to have DeBono's email in my hand and use that as ammunition to argue for more. Yeah.
That's good.
But anyway, so that's what's going on with me. It's not terrible, but I'm disappointed. There are some women on olaparib who have gotten years out of it, and I was really hoping that that would be the case for me, but that apparently isn't going to be the case.
Have we seen any results in other cancers like ovarian of these second and third generation or second generation PARP inhibitors being effective?
In a patient that had been taking and then failed the first generation?
Yeah, in cancers other than prostate cancer.
I don't know, but I'm guessing that it's this is part of, this is the rationale behind Johan's suggestion that it might help me.
Okay.
I mean, there must be some data from somewhere.
Okay.
I don't think, I had to have been one of the very first prostate cancer patients to be put on olaparib. And so, there aren't very many of us that have probably failed it yet. But for the literature from ovarian cancer in particular would be informative.
Or let me just briefly go to Peter. Peter, did you have a couple of questions you wanted to raise?
I just did. I was asking, whether you can go back after you failed, after a break, and redo it.
I should emphasize, I really don't know the answer to that. Something in me says probably not, but I don't know. I'm going to track down the answer.
But Peter, you're talking specifically about PARP inhibitors, correct?
Yes.
Right. But did you have any questions you wanted to raise about anything else?
No, I think I'll leave it at this point.
Okay.
Bill, is someone? Are you writing up the story of your journey, because it's pretty unique, and could be really useful, down the road for other people.
Well,
in terms of your genetic testing and the whole progression and what you've done, and you've got a remarkable story there.
There is a small blurb or article about me in the New York Times about 1.5 years ago that was attached to a larger story about targeted cancer therapies. And the title is something like The Researcher Becomes the Patient. But it's very short and lacking in detail. And I wrote something that was longer, and they asked me to just that. The editor that helped me put together that shorter article asked me to write something longer, and I did, and I submitted it, but she's gone. And I haven't gotten any response, but I just haven't had time to follow it up. But I do plan to follow it up. If not there, then somewhere else. And I've talked to my oncologist in chief, Jim Moeller, he's the chair of the NCI committee that sets the standards for prostate care throughout the country. About writing a case report, And and so I plan to do that too. But that's, and plus I'm going to give a talk in Grand Rounds here at Roswell at some point. But that's, I think that the more important, the more important information that my story brings out is for patients rather than for physicians. Well, for both physicians and patients. Yeah.
I wonder if someone like Renata, who's got experience writing for publications, would have the time or the interest to document your story or do something. I'm not trying to put the burden on you, but I just feel it's a pretty amazing story.
Well, I have lots of a huge amount of writing experience.
Great.
Too, I've written lots of lots of scientific papers, and in fact, I wrote a book chapter about 11 years ago. I think I've told you guys this in the past, that in which I predicted that olaparib would be very useful in the clinic based on preclinical studies, which makes the story even more unique. But yeah, so it's not, I don't think it's a question of finding time. I'm still working as a scientist, and, I'm trying to, I have a manuscript that my collaborator and I have been, trying to package and get published. And so I've been really focused on that for the last several weeks. But now that my, once that's taken care of, then I can focus on this. But yeah, thanks for the suggestion. I agree that it is a story that should be, there would be a broad audience for it.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Well, just a couple of things. First of all, a quick reminder again, Jake and Peter, please call GoToMeeting and sort out what's going on for both of you before your next meetings, so you don't get caught short.
For sure.
Okay.
I got to work. All I had to do was re-enter my user email and my password, and I was able to log on. So I'm fixed.
Okay. So whatever it is, Peter, call them. I'm sure it's a simple fix.
Yes, will do.
And
on my list, first thing.
The last thing that I just want to say is just to ask you all to remember Paul. I put in my email that we lost him on September 3rd. We kind of knew that, and because when we went to PCRI, Jim Marshall said to us that they thought that he'd probably passed away, but he had asked that nobody be informed. He didn't want to make any type of fuss is the wrong word, but he didn't want it to be newsworthy. It's probably the best way to say it. He was a very private man. He identified himself by his actual name with us, but he didn't even do that in Australia, where he went as Paul Edwards, which was his middle name. And so we had the idea, and I said, well, to Jim at the time, how are you going to find out? He said, well, when they're ready, his family will let me know. And then Jim published something on the Australian site, and that's, of course, how I found out earlier this week. And we all remember him really fondly, especially over the last year where he had such a rotten time. And first of all, he had to put his wife in an institution, and then his spine collapsed, and he had all those issues in the hospital, and he tried to get out and went back in, but he was always totally stoic. When I don't have to tell you, you all remember, whenever we asked him, oh, everything's fine. How's the food? Oh, it's fine. Everything was always fine. And I think from what Jim told us, about sometime in early August, which probably around the time we stopped hearing from him, he got really depressed and he sort of cut himself off from everybody, even Jim Marshall and his buddies who he'd been so tight with in the Australian prostate cancer community. So it didn't exactly come as a surprise to myself or to Peter, but it's still really sad. So, Peter, did you want to say anything?
No, it's a difficult time. I mean, I spent a couple hours last night with my friend Mike Tamales and his wife, and it's, he's at the point of no more drugs, no more care, no more options. It's just pain management now, and it's a difficult time hanging out with people. When they know what's coming, and they're trying to stay as upbeat as possible, but it's just you don't want to abandon them. You can't abandon anybody. I mean, it's not like you can be of help anymore in terms of saying, well, let's try this and let's try that. You're beyond that. You're just there to be with them. And I felt we were great for Paul. I mean, I think he knew that he was reaching the end, and I think just having the camaraderie, even on the phone, calling us from his hospital room was a great benefit to him. So let's not underestimate the power of our friendship and connection over the phone lines or in person. We mean a lot to each other.
Thank you, Peter. Okay.
That was thank you, Peter, very much.
Very well said.
I'm sorry to hear that he's reached that point.
All right, guys. We'll be back on the call next Tuesday. So I'll look forward to hearing all of you again at that point in time, and reach out to me every now and then if it's easy for you to, if you want to, or you've got anything to discuss. Oh, and just a real quick thank you to Len and to Bill for helping us with this Pfizer grant that hopefully we'll have done by the end of this week and we will submit. So thank you, both of you. All right, guys. Say goodbye.
So Len and Rick, do you want to talk on the phone now for a few minutes?
We could. Len, can you do that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, yeah, we'll hang on. I won't close the room. All right, guys.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.